Hey gang, this is Fillmore, just letting you know that if you enjoy our podcast, quite frankly, a Howard Stern podcast, and you'd like to donate some money for the upkeep, or you want to request certain clips, please donate to our Patreon page at patreon.com/JimFix. That's JIMFIXX. You can donate as much as you want for as long as you want. There's absolutely no obligation. Hey gang, it's Fillmore. Just a little notice to apologize in advance for the audio quality of my mic, which sounds like stir-fried shit with this particular recording, and half of a future recording that I've already recorded with Sam. What happened was the microphone was working fine. It's just that the software we used to capture everything was picking up the webcam audio, which should have been deactivated but wasn't. And it's something I don't normally have happen, but it was just a screw up with my computer at the time. So I hope it doesn't affect your enjoyment of this episode, much less the subsequent episode that's coming out, which we won't tell you about. We'll hope you'll enjoy that one as well. It's a little longer. And only half of that one was affected, so the other half is business as usual. Most of it is with regular audio levels. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this little mini episode, and we'll see you guys soon on Facebook and other media.
Do you believe I really care?
I don't think you care at all.
I care a lot. I
mean, seriously.
I don't know myself what I want to do.
But I mean, do you think, when you say you'll give us notice, do you think like a week is good?
I'll give you my notice now. Just if you find a job, fine, and then if I stay here, then I'll get
the last person you told that to went to the Tonight Show.
Do your children get upset by that?
I have a 14-year-old son. What do you think he thinks about right now?
But he's probably upsetting that his mother's ass is in the bedroom, and that if the kids bring over friends.
I think you're just being absolutely Jewish.
Why is that Jewish?
That you'd be protective.
No, I've had this discussion with people who are not Jewish. You sound like a nagging mother. Wait a second.
Yeah, but Eleanor, should you have that picture in your room? Your 14-year-old
son
could look
I'm asking you, is that damaging to a child to see his mother?
My children are very well balanced. I don't see them there.
I once saw my mother come out of the shower. It traumatized me.
Yeah, I can imagine. She looks like you.
She had some... Oh.
Sorry. That just slipped out.
Jewish, looks like you. I can't get... Now I see why these guys leave.
I understand.
I'm exhausted from it all.
I understand the point you're making.
I'm exhausted from last night. I'm exhausted from this morning. I'm exhausted in general.
You didn't really go out last night.
I did. It was a lot. It was just, I got a wife. She's trying to...
You were out for 45 minutes.
I was out for 45 minutes, and she's like shell-shocked from me. I drained the life out of everyone.
Oh, my God.
It's enough.
What is the big deal? You are so uptight.
I don't want to be part of any Hollywood establishment. I don't want to meet Hollywood people. I don't want to have anything to do with them. My wife wants to go to these parties and stuff. I'm not interested.
Because I drive into Manhattan every day and I listen to you, okay? And if you cut out the bitching, it probably would be about an hour of broadcast.
You're right. And you want to know something? Okay. Which, I wish you wouldn't write a book, honestly.
Oh, stop.
I really do. I mean, I'm not really... I mean, it doesn't do me much good.
It doesn't do you much
She's
good.
talking about donating most of the profits, some of the profits to charity. I went, what the fuck would you do that for?
Welcome, everybody, and this is, believe it or not, our second SF minisode, SF meaning Sam and Fillmore. The last one will be out by the time you've already heard this, regarding the things.com article that Sam and I performed an autopsy on. And this was an idea. With me today, of course, is our barrister from Arizona. Can I say that?
Yeah, I guess, even though they don't use barrister much here in the States.
I just thought it sounded a little more effete and a little more, gold heels and gold teeth.
Well, no, you know what? It's actually a little bit appropriate because in England, the barristers and whatnot, they wear wigs. So this flows right into what we're talking about.
Cary had this idea. He messaged me privately. He's on our he's my brother on the radio karate show that we do every so often. We're long overdue for a new episode, guys. And he had this idea as he was driving, I believe, and I let him talk about it. Cary, what's the premise for this?
Yeah, I was driving back from Nogales, Arizona. I had a case down there, and in case nobody knows what a barrister is, with Fillmore using these arcane words. I'm an attorney or a lawyer, and anyway, I was driving back, and anybody that's ever made that trek from Phoenix to Nogales and Nogales back to Phoenix, it gets pretty lonely. It's just a straightaway and not a whole lot of scenery other than like Tucson. In any event, one of the things that I did down there, I've got a relationship with a firm in Tucson, and one of the attorneys down there helped me out with a trust that I did or my wife and I did to kind of, take care of our estate after we both pass away, or one of us passes away, or whatever. You could really kind of construct them however you want, and it got me thinking about Wiggy. It got me thinking about Howard Stern and how once he kicks the bucket or shuffles off this mortal coil, what's going to become of his estate? His
marbles.
Yeah, his marbles. And he, as we all know, you can't take them with you unless he plans on doing some kind of King Tut type situation.
which would you, let's be honest, would you put it past him?
Yeah, I don't know. He's going to get buried in the Valley of Kings somewhere in a tomb that, is going to be secret. I mean, that'd be the only way he could conceivably try to take it with them. But
hey, looks, even the Sphinx got a nose job eventually from Napoleon.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So, well, here's so basically when Cary and I were discussing this from day to day, he suggested, look, check out these famous celebrity cases where the estates were held up by trustees, or there was an issue of, I don't know, paternity, or the family was up in arms and things were tied up in litigation. I just finished reading an article about the previous judge asking to be recused from the Anna Nicole Smith trial because
I saw that quote.
17 years that it's been going on. He said, "You guys don't want to settle. It's clear that I'd rather not waste the rest of my life on this."
Yeah, he basically was like, "I hate all the lawyers involved. You guys won't settle. You won't even talk. This is it's torture. Take me off this case."
Yeah, can you imagine the judge just throwing down the gauntlet saying, "Fuck it, get me out of here"?
Yeah, and this was a federal judge, and this was not just some justice court down the street. I mean, the federal judiciary is very powerful, very conservative, and for and very kind of, kind of starch shirt, kind of stiff place. And for that judge to essentially, go off on that tangent, I was like, man, this guy is sick of it.
Well, it must, you can imagine what it must be like for him to go that length of time and then realize there's just this is a black hole of no progress. Nothing's going to happen with this. So for him to do that, it must be horrendous, the case.
Well, it really was. I mean, since we're on that subject about Anna Nicole, and I don't want to get too far in the legal weeds and make this, where people just turn off the podcast or delete it.
Yeah, no.
But it okay. So everyone knows Anna Nicole Smith, kind of before she got super mega famous, she was she grew up in and around Houston, started stripping, and met I think he was 89 years old at the time, or maybe he was 89 when they met, or when he got, or which one it was. But his name was what was it, Marshall?
Yeah, Anna Nicole Smith, you were saying, was married to J. Howard Marshall.
Right, and so when they met, she was stripping at a Houston strip bar. He's in his 80s. He'd been married a number of times, and he had adult children that I think all of them were pretty much older than Anna Nicole.
It's possible.
Yeah. So they get married. Interestingly enough, she was never in his will, believe it or not. But, but she made a claim that, oh, no, he wanted me to have this, he wanted me to have that. And the judge in Texas in state court, I think initially was just like, get out of here with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But at the same time, Anna Nicole was living in California. I mean, this is where it gets kind of weird and legalistic and just bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
She had what was it, an $850,000 default judgment that was filed by a housekeeper for sexual harassment. Apparently she was sexually harassing this housekeeper, or the housekeeper filed a lawsuit. She never answered it. So it was defaulted in California court.
Okay.
So she had to file bankruptcy.
Wow.
And the bankruptcy court somehow, probably through her attorneys, got wind that there was this potential claim against Jay Howard's estate.
Okay.
And so they were thinking that, oh, well, you know what? She's going to be coming in the millions.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we add that to her bankruptcy? And then we're dealing with two different state courts. It gets elevated to federal court since we're dealing now with controversies in two different states. And that set the stage for 17 years of litigation.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately she lost. I think at one point she won like $44 million, and they never settled. She should have, in my view, and it's easy to say hindsight being 20/20, but there had to have been an offer. You would think.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Look, here's, how about $5 million and go away? Take it.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah. But she ultimately ended up with none of his money.
Mm-hmm.
And a ton of lawyer bills.
I bet. Jesus Christ, they must have been like she was chum and they were the sharks. Just like lapping up all the corpse. I mean, she died. Like her son predeceased her, so she had no heirs. She had no heir, not related to J. Howard Marshall. Like hold on for a moment. J. Howard Marshall III. My God, this is incredible.
Yeah, he died. The son that was bringing the action against Anna Nicole, he ultimately died while the case was pending.
Isn't that amazing?
yeah, but and then it's so bizarre. He had a younger son that joined Anna Nicole's lawsuit that was like on her side because he had actually been cut out of J. Howard Marshall's will. I mean, the case is just, they'll be studying this in law schools for years.
I was going to say, like, if you're the lawyers in the case itself, do you ever want it to be settled? Because you're going to be making money. You're going to be making yacht payments off of it forever.
Oh, man. But that's the problem. That really, truly is the problem. I mean, in cases that I deal with on a much smaller level, like on a personal injury case, once someone runs into the back of someone else's car and that they get injured, and you're dealing initially the attorney deals with an adjuster from the insurance company, and you try to work it out, and generally the client's in better shape if you work it out with the adjuster, because once but sometimes the adjusters are just unreasonable, and you're like, what, screw you. Yeah. We're going to have to file a lawsuit. But then once it gets to the lawyer that the insurance company hires, they're not really interested in settling. They're billing. Yeah. They're billing the insurance company. So it's just like, let me file this, let me file that, and it's like, yeah.
Well, let's first address a few things. First of all, I just asked Sam this. We recorded a special episode, or half of a special episode on yesterday, actually, and we won't tell people about what that is. We will just drop it on you guys with no advance notice. We were talking about, what would you rather have? Robin's failed TV pilot, or a look at the settlement between Wiggy and Allison? And she said she had to think about it for a hard moment, because you can pretty much guess what's in the suit against Allison, because even though it's sealed, she lived with him however many years, and they probably had no prenup. Why would they have? Right. And he had, she would say, I was responsible. I helped make him what he was. So she probably got way more than 50% of whatever he earned, or even future earnings.
Yeah, he probably got a cut of his future earnings for a set amount of time.
Yes,
and,
up to a certain point. And Sirius wouldn't be part of that, I'm sure.
Oh, right. And so that's what he was looking for, or that's what he used to, every now and then he would really complain about it.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then so we know that the kids are going to be taken care of through Allison anyway, because she at the point of their divorce, I'm sure he was good for $50 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the time things had rolled on, because he was definitely making millions of dollars up until the divorce. Right.
So and I wanted to kind of make sure that people understood there's a difference, and I'm sure that Wiggy went this route, but there's a difference between a trust and a kind of a will that more people are probably familiar with. Like a trusts are private. You can, for instance, the trust that I did with my wife and I, it's private, so nobody will be able to really get into it. It's written down. The personal representative will have a copy. The attorney has a copy, but it's private. Now, a will, on the other hand, has to be probated at some point. That means it goes to probate court, and that's public record. Okay. So, and now every good trust has what they call a pour over will, which means, let's say you forget something. You forget to put, I forgot about that condo in Maui that I have.
Ashtrays.
Yeah, exactly. And so it'll go in there. And then again, if it gets probated, that will be public, and you can kind of maybe look at a little bit of it, but a little bit of it hits the public. But I imagine with as private as Wiggy is, with the NDAs, with the everything else that he's ever done, it's going to be super secret. And the only real fallout we're going to get is going to be from whoever gets cut out of that trust, because a will, like a trust, you can give the money to whoever you want to. And so whoever gets shafted, we're going to find out from the tell-all after that.
Okay, so that leads me to my next point. So we're going to talk about more salacious cases where kids were cut out of their parents' wills, and the ones we touched on a couple of them, and then there are other ones that are less sort of devastating, like the Tori Spelling. I think she had a brother as well, that they didn't get the mother load. The most of it was given to the mother. I can't remember, Candy Spelling or something. Right. And the reason was the way they rationed, they got something like $800,000 each, which for them is, chicken feed, the kids. And you'd think, wow, what a cheap asshole the father was. But it was explained by the mother. These kids never learned how to spend properly. If we gave them $200 million, they'd blow it in a year. So she's had to dole out money to help Tori Spelling, because she stole like $6,000 birthday parties for her kids, and go into some Tiffany shop and pay $60,000 in 5 minutes. Just walk out of there with extravagant bullshit.
Yeah, but that's I remember when that all went down, and I remember that explanation, and it's still screwed up in my view, because look, that's one of the beauties about trusts. You can structure them however you want. For instance, before me and my wife got married, I had a trust prior to that. And one of the things was my son at the time was in college, but he hadn't graduated. He's since graduated. But I had a provision in there that, look, he gets this amount, or he gets this part of the estate immediately, and he gets the rest once he graduates from, and I made it specific, like a 4-year university, not some not one of these fly by night Zoom colleges or Trump. No, he can't go to Trump University or like that. So
audited.
Yeah, exactly. So you could have done that if Aaron Spelling wanted to, he could have structured that and said, look, they get this amount of money per year for X amount of years until they do X, Y, Z. So that's just BS. And then, how long do you think it's going to be? That Candy Spelling is not going to be doling out money to them I bet she's cut them off already.
Maybe. I mean, there's a certain. So anyway, the other ones we're thinking of was Betty Davis, Joan Crawford, Jerry Lewis was a huge one because it's more recent. But David Cassidy, Brando cut his kids out of these remaining kids out of the will, from what we understand. That's why they ended up selling his island, or it's still up for sale.
Right. Oh, the one in Tahiti or whatever. Or
wherever it is exactly. Yeah, and I think you're right. And I don't know. I think it has been sold. I think there's developers now. Before COVID, they were starting to sell this Marlon Brando Island, like go where go where Jor-El spent his waking moments eating, yo-yos and whatever. So let's go with the Jim Morrison, because you mentioned about Jim Morrison. That was one of the key ones. Right.
So Jim Morrison had, believe it or not, had a will. It wasn't very sophisticated. It was. Just something essentially. It looks like he just wrote it down and had witnessed by someone, but he left everything to his girlfriend at the time, and then he dies in Paris, and then a few years later, she also had substance abuse issues, and she winds up dying. Yeah. Neither one of them had any children, either with each other or by themselves. Yeah. She died intestate, which means she died without a will.
That's right.
Trust. So if you die, if you're single, never had any children, and you die, the estate goes up. It goes next to your parents. Mm-hmm. That's where it went. It went to her parents. So think about that. You're Jim Morrison's mom and dad and sister. I think he had a sister and a brother too, but none of them got anything. I mean, I think he might have left something. He had a provision that about his brother and sister, but the parents, I know for a fact, he specifically cut them out of the will.
Well, there's a little article from this website, airsandsuccesses.com, and it's just a real quick rundown. He died in 1971, July 2nd, heroin overdose, and his estate was worth $400,000. I mean, let's adjust it for inflation. It's still not a lot it would be worth a lot more later on because of his death, obviously, and because of likeness rights. So Pamela Corson was his common law wife, actually, not even just girlfriend, because they were, I guess, I don't know how the state law worked at that point.
Right.
After he died, his estate was tied up in litigation in probate court. Women came forward claiming that Morrison was the father of their children, which, he was a bit of a coxman. It wouldn't surprise me if he left the little junior Morrisons everywhere. Other members of the Doors sued the estate, claiming that they were due outstanding cash advances that had been paid to Morrison, which might have been true. I mean, he was incredibly irresponsible in that last year where he was bloated and they barely did anything. And he just drank and was high most of the time. So it says here, in early 1974, the court recognized Corson as Morrison's heir. She died in April 74 without a will, as you said. Therefore, under I think it says intestacy law.
Yeah, basically she died intestate, so that means again it went up to her parents.
Well, this was surprising. Mm-hmm. This was surprising to me. It says his estate comprised a quarter of the Doors' future royalty income, so it was split 4 ways with the members, which is pretty amazing.
Right.
Because if you take Jim Morrison away from the Doors, they're just playing bar mitzvahs. Right? It says here the rights in Morrison's image passed to her parents. Right. Morrison's parents' litigation for a share of the estate ended several years later in an out-of-court settlement, with Morrison's taking half of the royalties and the Corsons controlling rights to manage and control Morrison's image, music, and royalties. So it says at the bottom. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I remember us talking about this when we were initially when I was on that lonely stretch of highway heading out of Nogales. That this is a case where the lawyers or the parties, at least they realize it's like, look, we could tie this up forever. We might totally win. We might totally lose. But the only winners are going to be the lawyers who are billing each of us for this.
Yeah.
Because I really think Morrison's parents, I don't know how much of an I've been kind of looking through it myself. Like, what arguments were they making?
Yeah,
that he wasn't of sound mind when he made the decision to cut him out. But to Corson's parents' credit, they're like, you know what? We don't want to have this all tied up in litigation forever. How about this? And they settled. And then, like you said, nobody even really knows what the split is or the term. They settled things, on I guess a friendly enough basis, and they kept it confidential.
Yeah. And they said the estate's worth something like $80 million now, which makes perfect sense because the T-shirts are everywhere. Like he just became an icon.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you die young. When you die like David Cassidy did, just not so much. So it says here that he didn't have a very close relationship with his parents, so that makes perfect sense why they wouldn't have been named as beneficiaries. If he has siblings, it's curious that they didn't. It says here, where is it? Yeah. Okay. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I read somewhere that if Corson would have predeceased him.
Yes.
Yeah. His brother.
If she died within 3 months of his passing, his assets would pass to his brother and sister. You have to imagine his brother and sister were like, how do we offer? How do we? Okay, so that's an example. My contention is this. This is based on nothing. I have no legal, experience whatsoever. Wig is a litigious asshole and has been for years. Whenever he feels that he's been, defamed, the only time he doesn't is when it's true. Like the stripper at Scores that he bought a Mercedes for. He bitched and moaned about it, but he never ever sued the New York Post for page 6 for doing that article. So that means it is true, in my opinion. Well, he went after so many others.
Truth is a defense.
Absolutely.
To defamation. Yeah.
So my thing is okay, and I also asked Sam and I asked Raven for their opinions, and I'll tell you theirs as well. So because I wanted we don't know, it's all speculation, guys. But I figured that amongst the kids, Emily gets the least because of that New York Post article, and the fact that she released an album and she's really she's studying Judaism. She's a rabbi. She would have done that to piss him off.
Right.
Absolutely. And has also not treated Robin very well. And he's, Robin's closer. She's not close to him, but she's closer to him than his own kids. And she had an issue with Robin. So Emily gets the least. Deborah gets the second least because she made him a grandfather. How dare she?
Another mouth.
Ashley might get the most because not because she's the baby, but because for a while there she did have some kind of relationship with him and Beth, and in his little childish mind, it's like, well, at least she tried.
Right.
But other than that, and Beth is going to get probably something like just some payoff to fuck off, like $10 million to get out of here.
But that might not be enough for her. That's why I think. Between her and maybe Emily, I could see Emily writing a, Wiggy Dearest novel.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And I mean, it seems like she's almost champing at the bit to do so.
I think so.
And I agree with you. I think that he probably would not give her as much as the other two girls.
Right.
But
just to be like, what's your feeling now? Let's say, okay, for example, he dies tomorrow, right? He's talked about how he's changed his will so many times. It probably looks like a football, like a roll call sheet, like who we calling up, like a playbook,
right?
All these X's and all these cross out things. So what happens, do you think, in this instance? Suddenly he just passes away tomorrow.
Well, first off, we have to hope that he didn't use the same law firm that helped him with that serious lawsuit. The judge is like, "Hey, this. I'm sorry, this will is so badly drawn up. I'm throwing it out, and it's going in testate rules from here on out."
The offices of failure, incompetence, and malfeasance.
Right, but no, I think, like I said, he's probably, I would bet money that it's not, that the only will he has is a pour over will that's part of his trust. The trust is super private. And then it all really depends on how he divvied up the estate.
Okay.
We know the girls are going to have a cut. We know Beth's going to have a cut, and we know that Ralph is going to have a cut.
That's the key. It's because of Ralph that I figured out we got to talk about Liberace and Jim and Scott Thorson.
Right.
We're not saying anything, guys. But Scott Thorson was given all kinds of gifts by Liberace, who, of course, died in the closet. But, he was in the closet the way Paul Lynde was in the closet, let's face it. And I think he ended up getting something like $95,000 as a palimony settlement. Before, so 1986, Liberace died 1987. And he was left with whatever he was given, which was minks and diamond, rings and stuff like that, maybe some cars, but really not a whole lot of money for 17 years together.
Yeah, and I don't believe he was in Liberace's will per se. Yeah, no. Because they broke up before he passed away.
That's right. And supposedly there was a deathbed, they reconciliation and what have you. But Liberace was worth a fortune for a Vegas performer at that time. Excuse me, incredible amount of money.
Yeah, so Thorson should have gone in there and grabbed Liberace's hand and had it scrawl across the signature page on a trust or something. That's the only way you could do it,
Okay, so in this case, like we know Ralph is we presume he's the butt boy, and he knows all the secrets. Is there some kind of, because the people, some people will bring up, what about Ralph's relationship with Sam Simon? Years ago when Sam Simon passed away, there was speculation that he left something to Ralph. And I'm sorry, guys, it might sound, awful, but my contention is that Ralph was a butt boy passed between Sam Simon, who is, in my opinion, flaming homo, and he had a series of beards. And John Stamos, who is kind of alleged that he's a swinger, like goes both ways, and Wiggy. And so there was something left in the will for Ralph from Sam, who was also worth shitloads of money. Like Jennifer Tilly probably got the lion's share, but I'm sure Ralph was taken care of by Sam Simon.
So it wasn't, and I think the key here is it wasn't enough for Jennifer Tilly to go public or sue Ralph or contest,
right?
Or not necessarily sue Ralph, but contest the estate or the division of the estate. Right. So
maybe 5 million, let's say, or even just $1 million.
Right, exactly. So it wasn't enough for her to do it because, like I said, these you get into litigation. Litigation is expensive, and these battles are tough to fight a lot of times. Oh yeah. Unless you have and the biggest. I guess the two biggest parts are that the person wasn't of sound mind and body, and the other, and they're kind of related, is that someone else had undue influence over the person while they were dying or in a point when they didn't have all of their faculties. So those are tough to prove.
So in this case, how much do you think Wiggy goes out of pocket in death to make sure that Ralph doesn't release anything? And he can't, if Ralph's still around, there's nothing he can do about it anyway. His estate could.
Right.
We talked about this with the Carson thing. Like when Bushkin released his Carson book, there was no attorney-client privilege because, well, first of all, he had been fired by Johnny decades before. But then with Johnny's death, that's another extra cut to the tie. And he's under no obligation to keep that under wraps. So how much do you figure Wiggy pays Ralph to absolutely guarantee his silence?
Well, I think it boils down to, like kind of percentages, because I don't know, or we could talk about how much do you think between the house in Florida, the properties that he has, the bank accounts, the Sirius stock, how much do you think Howard's worth? Like you said, if he dropped dead tomorrow, how much is his estate worth?
Well, that's, okay. I don't know about in terms of equity. I have no idea what any of the. I know we know the West Palm mansion was worth. So he paid whatever they paid was like more than it was worth, I'm sure. But 50 million, you never know what you get when you sell it, of course.
So
And,
it might be easier to talk about it maybe in percentages. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I say if Ralph gets I'd say 5%.
Okay.
5% of, depending if that's over, let's say $2.5 million. That's probably enough to keep Ralph silent. Or there could be, like I was telling you earlier about the thing with my son and about what college he graduated from. There may be almost kind of like an NDA wrapped up into the trust. If that makes sense. Like, oh, okay, look, you'll get this amount of money if you keep your mouth shut for this amount of years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would say conservatively, Howard's at least worth $300 million. Because, well, he does, like Sirius is paying for his limo service that we know of, and, they pay for a lot of his, and he's just a cheap bastard and doesn't actually go anywhere and doesn't spend anything. And, I don't think Beth has control of any of the money, so he can be as frugal as he wants within reason. And he's got expenses. I mean, you've got these places you're paying taxes on, but he's got more than enough money to offset taxes, property taxes and what have you. So, and we know how much his contracts they've claimed he's getting, but we don't know that he's actually making the money that they say he's making. That's the whole point. Sam and I were discussing on the, he gets 90 million. I don't believe that. I firmly believe they signed him for a 5-year deal plus the tapes for like 100 million total for 5 years, not for each year. Because if his audience is really dwindling that much, is Sirius really stupid enough to pay for non-existent listeners? And having
they may be. I mean, they really seem like a very poorly run company. Wow. Yeah, it's just some of the decisions they made. I mean, and like you said, if they're paying him that much money when we know nobody's really listening. I mean, nobody I know listens to him.
It's really bad when you get to the point you're talking to people, and you talk to people of a certain age, like 30 something, that you go Howard Stern, and they go, who?
Yeah. Exactly.
You're not even trending as an afterthought in people's minds. So we're just reading this now from the Associated Press. This is from 1989, after Betty Davis had passed away, and she wasn't really worth a lot of money as an old bat. And I love Betty Davis. Actually, she was one of my favorite interviews of all time. She left nearly most of her $1 million estate to her son and a close friend, but nothing to her daughters, one of whom wrote about being raised by a hateful mother. So I was
an alcoholic.
Yeah,
an alcoholic. Yeah,
right.
Really laid it out.
So she left her daughter BD. It was Barbara Davis Hyman. She called her BD. That was their nickname, and it was dated 1987. So in 1985, BD, her daughter, had written a book called My Mother's Keeper.
Right.
It's very similar to Joan Crawford's, Christina Crawford, her daughter, writing Mommy Dearest, which became a classic camp movie with Faye Dunaway, which you've got to watch if you haven't already, guys.
Oh my God, that movie! I have memories of that movie because it was like it was on HBO, like on a loop.
Oh yes,
back in the day, and it coincided right around the time when let's see, I was in college. My brother was still in high school, and we were both living at home. And cable had just come to our neighborhood. So we must have watched that movie like 1 million times, and to this day we could quote dialogue from it.
Well, this is the assistant's name was Catherine Cermak, and 3 years ago she wrote a book that I just bought because I didn't even know it existed, about her 10 years at being a secretary and being a confidant of Betty Davis, who she said taught her everything, and she got a huge chunk of what was left. So.
I was going to ask you how much did she get?
Let's see.
Must have got a pretty nice chunk.
Okay, here it says. Davis's. The will did not specify how Margot Merrill, which was Betty Davis' retarded, the adopted daughter, she was diagnosed as mentally retarded at age 3 and has been in special schools and institutions. I don't know how she was taken care of, or if she was. It says her adopted son, Michael Woodman Merrill of Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, receives about half of the $600,000 to $1 million estate. His wife, Shushu, I'm not joking, that's not a typo. His wife, Shushu, was left clothing. Hope she fit in size -2. Michael and Margot Merrill were adopted when Davis was married to actor Gary Merrill. Catherine Cermak, this is the lady I was mentioning, a friend and secretary who lived with Davis in her Los Angeles apartment, gets about half the estate. She was also left cookbooks and recipes, a gold charm bracelet, other jewelry, a desk, furniture, and other silverware with the initials BD.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah, she did. I ran across an interview with her on the internet, and yeah, that book was just kind of, people were saying it was almost too slavish in praise. But look, if I would have got more than half of Betty Davis's estate, she'd have been the best thing in the world too.
I mean, it says, so a bunch of friends got things like Faye Forbes of Peoria, Arizona, daughter of Davis' sister, Barbara Davis Berry, was left 6 silver condiment holders. I mean, they really get petty. Like, who in Howard's life gets the Gary puppet? You know what I mean? Like, who gets the brother? What's that thing that label maker that he used to use?
Didn't he claim to have like some kind of he was starting like a microphone collection or something like that, or who gets the Iron Man mask that he hated so much?
Well, I thought Ralph has that.
Oh, does he?
Or he has a different one. I can't remember exactly. But I mean, there's no shortage of famous people who claim they're not giving their kids anything. Bill Gates is one of them. He says he launched Giving Pledge with his wife Melinda 2010, which was like a big, huge, which is supposed to be for the billionaires of the world to give most of their money away to philanthropic causes. So he's claiming he's not leaving his kids anything. They're going to have to make their way. Simon Cowell's a real dick. It says here, his $300 million is said to be going to a charity that aids kids and dogs rather than a trust fund for little Eric, his son.
Wow. No, I mean, it's I get some of it, but
yeah,
but when you do that stuff, that's when you invite these tell-all books. So, I figure, like you say, okay, let's just say, for sake of argument, that Wiggy's estate, free and clear, is worth $300 million.
Sure.
I think for Ralph not to go public, he's going to have to. I'm going to revise my figure up. I'd say he's going to have to get at least $10 million to buy his silence.
I think so too. If he's still alive by then, if he hasn't been taken care of by people with waste management connections, before then.
Yeah, because think about it. I mean, $10 million, even living in New York, New York City, Manhattan, that's still probably enough to guarantee you won't ever have to work again, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't have any kids. He's, and how old is Ralph? Ralph's got to be in his 40s now, right?
He's roughly 10 years younger, I think.
Okay, so he's in his 50s.
So he's late 50s, 56, 57 years old, something like that, which is hard to believe.
Very hard to believe when he's got the maturity of a tween. He acts like a 13-year-old girl.
They work perfectly together in that case. So here I asked, let's real quick, I'll read this because I promised I would. I asked Raven what she thought. She says, here's my take. I have been thinking about Wiggy Will Manifesto, and I'm having a hard time with it. The will may have small amounts left to his kids, Ralph, and a little extra for beef, but possibly the estate will be put into 112 Productions or another company that will be used to replay his stuff forever, whether on Sirius or another platform. He may have some plan to torture us forever so that he won't be forgotten. He said, I think the money will be left to his kids. The money left to his kids will be tied up into a bank account or trust that they can't access for a long time. Inherently, I agree with her. I think he doesn't want them getting anything just flat out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be structured and have all these provisions in it. God only knows what, but it'll probably, because he's such an egomaniac, it'll all be probably tied into or have some kind of proviso that says, if you ever publish a book, if you ever give an interview that's, negative or whatever, you're immediately cut off.
Mm-hmm. I think she says here also, Beef may get the Hamptons house and it will be turned into a cat sanctuary where she is doomed to live out her days as an even crazier cat lady, all tax deductible. The other two homes, West Palm Beach and Manhattan Penthouse, will be sold. I think it's the opposite. I think she will get the Manhattan fuck pad and the other place will be sold because they're worth more.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think, personally, my view on Beth, I don't even think she likes cats. And
no,
so,
God, no.
No, so it's just, that's just a means to an end. So
yeah,
as soon as Wiggy's dead and she gets, like you said, the Manhattan fuck pad, so she can hang out in Manhattan and screw around and start dating again. Why? Who wants to drive all the way out to the Hamptons? That's not the kind of action she's looking for.
Well, the other thing is when he dies, which whenever that is, I mean, we know for all we know, he lives to 100 and he outlives Beth, which would really be,
oh, God.
probably the worst case scenario for Beth.
Right.
But, when I married a cadaver who just won't die. The thing is, it's not like she's not relevant now. What's she going to be relevant like in 15 years from now?
No.
So she's not going to have any celebrity friends at that point. She'll just be an heiress.
Right.
Like Carson's last wife, the widow, she made off with the mother lode. Johnny was worth something like $500 million when Johnny Carson died. He was worth $500 million, but his foundation got something like $156 million right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And then the remaining estate, she got, I think, the most of it, but his two remaining sons also got whatever, like 20% each. So they made off with a good chunk of money too. And you never heard from them. And he left the running of his empire, like all the tapes, to his nephew Jeff Sotzing, I think.
Right,
so,
right. But that's the other part of it too, though. Like Wiggy doesn't have a foundation. He doesn't give a crap about any of this stuff.
No.
He doesn't give a crap about North Shore Animal League. He's not going to leave them anything. I mean, so and you're right. I mean, just thinking about it, and you're right. It's all pure speculation, but I think the only thing that's going to drive him is that fear that, from beyond the grave, somebody's going to write a tell-all. So he's got to make the payoffs when he's not here. So, it's the daughters or Ralph or whoever, but who knows with Ralph? Maybe, you never know with people. He gets 10 million. You and I are saying, oh, that's plenty, but maybe it's not. Maybe if he finds out that Emily gets 25 or 30, he's like, well, what the hell did she do? Why don't I have that?
Yeah. Well, this is the whole thing. If 10 million is not enough also to keep him silent, how much would it be enough to keep him silent? And I think inherently, because Wig is such a cheap bastard, it would be like more along the lines of a trust for Ralph as well. You're going to get $300 a month in perpetuity, or $250,000 a month in perpetuity. Just keep your fucking mouth shut.
Yeah, right. And with the proviso in there, unless you go public or whatever. But then, like I said, there's the tension from the other side. Say he overpays Ralph, and then Emily or Deborah or Ashley are like, "Wait a minute, hold on. Let me tell you what my dad was up to with Ralph."
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the thing: the kids have the inside scoop of what was happening during the marriage, and even afterwards. I mean, Allison would have told them everything. You can just to be a fly on the wall with Allison telling her two oldest daughters, you want to hear what a shit your fucking father was? Okay, now you can hear it. Because I was talking about it with Raven. Ashley was the only one with Beth because she was still too young to probably be told the full story when they did divorce. So she was also a minor. So he was on the hook till she was 18. Yes.
Right.
So either way, and then you see her stop going to the Knicks games with the Skeleton Twins when she gets to a certain age. Yeah, okay, maybe she went to one of her 9 schools. But at that point, if you're told the full story and it is his fault, are you really going to want to hang out with your asshole father? As much as, when he doesn't want to be around you, he's doing it because he has to.
Right. Exactly.
So here's my question. Shot in the dark, who releases the first tell-all? Because there will be one.
Maybe Gary.
Really?
Maybe, yeah. Because think about all that abuse that horse-toothed jackass has taken over the years. I mean, he's still the guy that I would, if I had money, I would pay almost any amount to seriously just step into a ring with him with gloves on. I mean, I cannot stand Gary, but there's part of me that thinks about all that abuse and thinks about, I don't know, maybe deep down underneath, he's really not a bad guy. I mean, he seems like a pretty good dad to his boys. And all that, I don't know about his marriage and all the guma and L.A. and all that stuff.
Right.
But I at the end of the day, honestly, I mean, I say all this stuff about wanting to punch him, but underneath, I think he's a pretty decent guy, and he probably, but he made a deal with the devil.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, he sold his soul, he sold his dignity for all those years to be the butt of the joke. And I mean, he is a clown and an incompetent boob. But with that being said, there's probably some underlying simmering simian hatred going on that once Wiggy's there, that he's no longer there, there's nothing he could do. He's unleashed like King Kong. And and maybe he does. Maybe he writes that book.
He's Cornelius Unleashed. All right. Well, let's figure this out also, because Robin, who says she's cancer free, but with certain types of cancer, you're always going into remission and it's coming back. So I'm sure she's back on chemo, what have you. And you wish we're not going to be like them wishing cancer on people. But let's say she's only got a year left, right? And she's, do you think she's got a tell all up her sleeve, waiting to be released posthumously as like a last minute, like fuck you in death? No,
not at all. I don't think so. I really don't. I think she's got so much going on. And I agree with you 100%, and I've seen it, both of I've seen it really up close with cancer. I mean, it's nobody's cancer free. I remember when they were saying, oh yeah, I'm cured of cancer. It's like, what are you talking about? So there's no way she outlives Wiggy. And even if she were to die beforehand, I don't see a tell-all coming out.
Interesting.
I think that if there was one in the wings, that Wiggy would unleash his team of incompetent attorneys that even through their incompetence would probably be competent enough to tie the book up for long enough where people either forget about it or he pays them off or whatever. It goes away. So I don't think it comes from her. I think, to me, and Gary, the reason I think Gary too is Gary knows where the bodies are buried. He's close enough to them. But like I said, I also think underneath all of that, ass kissery and all that stuff, I really think he underlying it all, that he hates Howard.
Oh, for sure. And I think they all do. And he knows enough to do a really, really interesting tell-all that people would buy. I don't know. Based on reading, They Call Me Baba Booey. I might just sign a ghostwriter to it. Maybe Chauncey. But here's the thing. I see it from two ways. The two ones he really has to worry about are Emily and Ralph, not Beth, because Emily takes care of the very early years, and she could tell you what it was like in the house. People seem to think that, kids are young, and with a certain age, they don't remember things. Bullshit. Any kid growing up in a household where the parents fought, they remember it like it was yesterday. They can't verbalize it when they're that age, but later on, they'll tell you what they felt, and they'll tell you what they saw, and it's like a steel trap. They don't forget that crap. So God only knows what Emily saw in that household with him being such a domineering, passive-aggressive pussy asshole. and being a cheap, like a tightwad, and not having anything to do with them, locking her and Allison out in the Bronx while he could be safe in a limo while they had to take a piss in a portable potty chair. I mean, the stories you hear over the years, he's an inhuman asshole. So it wouldn't surprise me if he donated it all to charity or just made it so that it was almost impossible for the kids to get any money whatsoever.
See, but I don't see that, because what charity would he donate it to? He doesn't care about anything or anybody. Is he going to give it to Israel?
He's a friend of Israel. I used to love that Gary Garver question. He'd ask celebs, "Are you a friend of Israel?"
I mean, what's he going to do? Donate it to a kibbutz out there?
I don't know. I mean, maybe to the Farrell hair company. He'll donate it to some plug company. I don't know. So it's fascinating though, because if you look at all of the famous over in history, Jerry Lewis was the one we just mentioned early on. He had 6 boys from his first marriage. One of them passed away from a drug overdose, but he deliberately left them nothing in the will and their heirs purposely. Why? One of them went to court to get money for his mother, who was left with nothing when they got divorced. Like, apparently, she was going to be homeless, and he said, "I had to sue my father to get my mother something."
That was the one that was, I think, she was a former like Las Vegas showgirl or something like that.
Something
right?
like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he went on the Dick Cavett show in the like early 70s and claimed all of his kids were loved and this and that. And he went on. This guy years later said, this kid said, when we heard a buzzer in our house, it meant Dad was home. We all scattered. This is a pretty scathing indictment of a guy who I actually think is a genius, but I'm sure he was an asshole of a father. There's no question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, just his treatment of just regular people and people in his own profession. I mean, man, the stories about the assholeness of Jerry Lewis are legendary.
Legendary.
Other than like Gilbert Gottfried, who always has that one rib. He goes, "Oh, he was always nice to me."
Yeah. It was the one. Well, Dice writes about meeting him in the book. He was set to do like a remake of The Nutty Professor, because he used to do that in his act early on, his stand-up. He'd become Travolta from Grease, but starting out as the Nutty Professor. And he met Jerry, and it was a little contentious at first, because his opening thing to Jerry Lewis was something like, "Listen, I've heard over the years, you can be a little prickly with people, and I understand. I don't care about any of that." It already starting off on a bad foot with Jerry Lewis, who would get like a little baby indignant, like, "What do you mean? Was Truffaut hard to deal with? Was all these legendary filmmakers, was Fellini hard to deal with?" So anyway, Dice met with Jerry, and they were going to do a remake that Eddie Murphy ended up doing, which I never saw. I would not even want to bother seeing it, but apparently it was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't bad,
but nothing tops the original. That was just a masterpiece.
No. It was okay. I mean, I enjoyed it back then, but my wife had it on not too long ago. It came on cable or whatever, and I couldn't get through like 10 minutes of it. I mean, it was okay the first time, but that was it.
It's not made for repeat viewings.
No, not really.
So so let's say let's go the opposite route. What would be a mitigating factor in something like, he's got the will, he talked about it, so I'm sure he's updating the will constantly, Wiggy. What would be something to tie up or conflict the reading of the will, like let's say a secret love child that may exist between him and Beth? What would be a monkey wrench in the cogs, for example?
Yeah, it would be something like that, like other heirs that no one knew about or that have come to fore. I mean, you saw that people, oh my God, when Prince died, how many people were, "Oh no, I'm his son and I'm his daughter," blah, blah, blah. Right. Yeah. So, but I really don't see that with Wiggy. I mean, he doesn't seem that interested in females anyway. So, I don't see it.
Ironically enough, he produced 3.
Yeah, really, unbelievably,
his worst nightmare.
repeated 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he, like I said previously, a monkey wrench would be that someone had undue influence over him while he was, sick before he passed away. Whether that maybe someone argues that was Beth, or that it was Ralph, or it was whoever, some other Svengali that shows up on the scene, like maybe Marcy Turk. That that's a name that we haven't thought of. I bet you she gets a chunk of the estate. I bet you she does. Yeah. I mean, she's the one that. What did he say about her? She saved his life.
Changed my life.
Changed my life. Yeah. Maybe he leaves some of it to that cult that she's in, that getting things done. Who knows? But
David Allen. Wow.
Right. But yeah, you know what? I bet you she gets a chunk. I bet you she does. Unless unless I don't know. You guys have seem to be more up to date with modern day Wiggy. Do you think her influence has waned any?
My contention was that, and this I don't think we talked about it on any of the episodes that we've recorded thus far, but he goes through so many fads of his own, like photography, karate, grilling, chess, red meat. And why would it be any different with these cults that he's involved in? He says he still does TM. I think he just sleeps on a fucking, couch in his office when he needs to, and there's no meditating going on. I think it's bullshit. I think he couldn't do it properly. He needed a TM tutor. With getting things done, he's also an idiot. And I think if the right person spoke to him, and that would be, according to the Reddit mole, a serious problem, Don Buchwald knew nothing about the Marcy Turk stuff going on. If your agent, if your super agent of decades doesn't know about this grifter, then what's going on? Like what else could go wrong? I think if someone gets in his ear and says, "Look what she did to your fucking legacy. Look what she did." If that penetrates, I think he's at a sort of a level of false self of narcissism that he thinks his legacy is intact because of her. So she might get something. You're right.
Right. Yeah. It all depends. Like you said, if he jumps off the GTD train, before it invariably hits the wall, maybe. But as it stands right now, I think that she's probably in line to get some money. But again, there's so many. The more people you add, the more people you add, the more it's a juggling act. Yeah. Who gets pissed off at the percentages or the dollar amounts that are shelled out? Yep. But I definitely think that there will be a Wiggy Dearest book from somebody. Because I like we were talking about Gary or I bet you Gary or Fred are not taken care of in the will. We know that, we're all presupposing that Robin's not going to make it very much longer. So I would bet everything I own that he doesn't give a dime to any of her heirs, which would be her nephew or brother or something. Yeah.
Well, I asked Sam, so I didn't want to forget what she had to say. Most of what she had to say kind of dovetails in with what we've said so far, but she believes that Ellen will be cut out of the will completely because he's pissed off his parents left Ellen the house.
His sister Ellen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So she says the lawyer will drop a trust, same as we've discussed. Ralph will be getting the most, more than Beth, to keep him silent. Beth will get a bit, and Beth will get a bit. Kids will get a monthly allowance. So it's that was pretty much her take on it. But I would be fascinated if the Howard TV's guys got together and did a, Wiggy Dearest, or like Stuttering John's already released it. And this is one of the things when we broke off and did our own thing and made QF that you recommended, and we're still going to get this done. I just don't know exactly when. The Rise and Fall of Stuttering John. And his book is going to be a jumping point because there's a lot of it that's nonsense and it's so poorly written and there's so many typos. I hate buying a book and fucking correcting it, paying to correct it. So, but he's the only one that's released something remotely tell-all-ish.
Right.
In the details. He just says it so poorly. Jackie's book, I haven't read. I had the audio book, but he just parrots the same talking points again and again, wanting to get back after 9/11, the lawyers didn't, they didn't get back to me in a proper fashion, whatever. Jackie's book is almost useless because he tells you about his upbringing and no one cares. No one wants to know about that.
I think they're both, Jackie and Stuttering John, they know how litigious Howard is. And so, they had to screen that book probably 1 million times before it even got published. And, so they're pulling the reins back on that in a big way. Mm-hmm. But, once he's gone, hey, maybe there's a book in there from Ellen. Think about it. I mean, she could talk about the early days and the puppet shows and the, circle jerks that her brother was doing and all that stuff. I mean, it might be some interesting reading,
maybe about the kids of Well-Met getting together and writing a book about this closet.
Yeah. The Playboy subscription and why that was necessary. I mean, whose mom does that?
That was the funniest. That was when I used to hear that echo. Even at that era, okay, I'm way younger than him by several decades, but at least a couple decades. You hid Playboys. You hid Playboys. They were in the woods. We'd actually had porn in the woods, like so many guys growing up. There was a couple locations in town where you get these maggot-ridden, like fucking soggy, Beaver Hunt and all these magazines that were passed down from generation to generation. Just go to this tree, and that's where they are. And but I mean, to say that your parents got it for you, your mother got it for you, no way. I think they thought he was a complete finook. And said, we got to get this for him. Put him on the straight and narrow, so to speak.
That's so funny how universal that is about, guys our age, like finding porn mags. Because I have a similar situation, but instead of the woods, it was the desert. We'd be riding our bikes through the desert. And I think what would happen is, these married guys, and this is all for the kids listening, this is all before the internet and all of that stuff. So, these married guys would stop off at a Circle K or 7-Eleven and buy like a porno mag and look at it. And then before they get home, they chuck it out the window.
At the window, yeah.
Yeah, in the desert area that was surrounded where I grew up. So we'd be riding our bikes, and it was like finding a mother lode. If we could find like a Hustler or a Penthouse, it was like, oh, this is gold. This is gold.
Well, would it strike you? Like, would you see it immediately if you were driving?
Yeah, you would see, and you'd see like the pages maybe fluttering.
The fold out.
Yeah, you'd see the pages fluttering. Like, all right,
Yeah, centerfold.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, that's. I think we got most of the points settled, and this was meant to be a Halloween bonus, guys. So this will be released during a week. We've got one already made, and this one's going to be following that up. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we? Do you think we got it all sorted out? I don't want to leave any stone unturned legally.
The only other kind of story we talked about it some, and we brought it up a couple of times just in conversation, and I think it's something that most people are familiar with. Is the Joan Crawford issue?
Yeah.
There's I would recommend it. You could just do a search for it in YouTube, but there's an excellent documentary on that specifically goes into the will that Joan left and how she cut out Christina and the other son, Christopher.
Christopher, yeah.
Right. And that's what prompted the writing of the book. What a lot of people don't realize, and they didn't talk about it in the movie Mommy Dearest at all, was there was another set of kids. She adopted a set of twins, and they got a nice chunk. But the thing I liked about that documentary, they went into it, and the twins got the money. One of them, like, essentially spent it all up and filed bankruptcy, and the other, like, kind of tragically died relatively young. And so, yeah, it was kind of a sad story, really, all the way around. And I think Christopher died kind of a broken person. I think he went to Vietnam, and he was a little bit troubled, but it's pretty. The whole situation was pretty sad.
Yeah.
No, but she really she shafted those two older kids.
Well, I mean, I think in the will it said something like Christina and Christopher are excluded from the will for reasons they fully know.
Yeah, they well know. Yeah.
Hold on. Let me see if I can find this one. I just okay. Burt Reynolds, when he passed away, I was curious about his story because he before he died, I think even the year he died, they were auctioning off all the crap in his house, including the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am. It was incredible the auction that went on because my buddy and mine were huge Burt Reynolds fans, and we were following this. So he and Lonnie Anderson had adopted a kid, Quentin, and I think one of them couldn't have kids, or they decided to, I don't know, she probably didn't want to get pregnant, period. And she said, I'm not fucking my figure up for a kid. She's just a, gold digging, narcissistic bitch. But either way, Burt was not, I'm sure Burt was not any fucking Boy Scout with the women he dated. He could be prickly. So at any rate, it says it excludes his only son and names his niece Nancy Lee Brown Hess, hopefully no relation to Rudolph, the trustee for his estate. And it says here, according to TMZ, Quentin 30 was left out of the will because Reynolds created a trust for him several years ago, and the money from that trust goes to his son. The move is usually done to avoid estate taxes. It appears all that Smokey and the Bandit star assets were put in the trust. So. So that he got somebody. There was an auction. I think he was having major financial trouble because he had legendary problems with spending. And after Lonnie Anderson, it got worse. And even though he was making Evening Shade money, it wasn't the movie money that he was making.
Right. And he tried to work. I mean, he was working all the way up until he got really sick. So it sounds like his son did get taken care of.
I think so.
Yeah, and you know what? That might have been poor reporting from TMZ or them not understanding the difference between a will and a trust.
Yeah.
And maybe all that was probated was the pour over will, and they might have really. Yeah, I think they missed the ball on that one. I think the son was probably taken care of.
It says also later in the article, further down in the article, that there would have been a conflict of interest if he'd been named the trustee of his own.
Right.
Yeah. So it was done to avoid any kind of, legal
impropriety.
Issues. Impropriety. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah. Because you're not supposed to name somebody you're not supposed to name essentially a beneficiary as the person that's going to divvy up the property.
That's right. And so if you want to go on with people real quickly, if you want to go on to people who fucking made out, even though they had nothing to do with the person at the time of death, was Priscilla Presley. Priscilla Presley had already divorced Elvis. They'd already been divorced by the time he died, but she took over the estate, and she kept deferring the time with which Lisa Marie could inherit it. Like she was supposed to happen when she was 18, didn't happen. It got deferred to like a board of trustees to take care of stuff. Athena Roussel, also the Christina Onassis' daughter, who would have been like the richest kid in the world at some point, richest heiress in the world whenever she got it. She did eventually get it, but that was another long protracted thing because her dad was claiming a piece of it, even though he wasn't married to her at the time, Christina Onassis at the time.
Well, there was something about Jackie Kennedy that she got cut out of Aristotle's money. I mean, obviously they got divorced before he died, but there was a payoff there.
Yeah. Christina paid her off. I read her autobiography in Greek. Actually, it was fascinating. And she just said, look, here, take whatever. Here's 50 million. Get out of his fucking life. Don't ever bother us again. Just something like that. I can't remember the figure, but it was a round, nice chunk. Because Jackie O she was also and I'm sure she had to deal with a lot of crap with the Kennedys anyway. So she turned into a real shrew by the end. But
but that's kind of funny because she went into the marriage getting paid and left getting a check.
Okay.
She made out going in and going away.
She was a true OG. Jackie OG. I'll have to see if I can get a Photoshop of that Onassis' funeral, because she's walking hand in hand with Christina Onassis with sunglasses on, and she's beaming. Counting the dollar signs. If you could see little, if you shut your eyes really tight, or you get in pain, suddenly you see gold sparks fly in the darkness.
Right.
Like you just probably see dollar signs flying in her. If you could picture them. Anyway, thanks so much for suggesting this one. I know we don't generally do speculative episodes, guys, that are pure speculation. They're usually based on some audio clips or some press clips or what have you. But in this case, we decided to make an exception because I thought it would be fascinating for some. So, Cary, thank you for suggesting it, and thank you for participating, sir. All
right. Hey, I'm headed to. I'll be headed to Nogales again next month. So if something strikes me, look forward to that call.
If you see any Kathy Jones porno mags, like 50 plus or something, I'll whack it up with you.
Yeah, if I see some pages fluttering, I'm gonna just pull off the side of the road and grab it.
These days, it might be USB sticks or like flash drives or DVDs, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
A little harder to spot. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and we'll guys, we'll catch you on the next episode coming up. I won't plug the next one because I'm not sure exactly when this one will air, but most definitely you'll be getting into the second and third episodes of 15 Foundation by the time this is out. So, from me and Cary, thank you guys. Take care.
All right. Goodbye, guys.
Okay? And I'm going to fly out there next week, and I'm going to straighten your ass out. And I'm going to make sure that you really get it. I'm going to make sure that you know what a rude, thoughtless little pig you really are. Do you understand? You're a rude, thoughtless pig. So be ready on Friday the 20th, because I'm coming out there. I'm going to tell you this, then I'm going to turn around. I'm going to fly right back home. You are a rude, thoughtless pig.